Stop right there! Put your hands up!
The security guard shouted before Eli even saw him. Hey, stop right there. Eli ran. His cart rattled violently behind him as he pushed it down the narrow alley, bottles clinking, heart slamming against his ribs. His breath burned. He could already feel the familiar fear crawling up his spine, the kind that came from knowing no one would listen if he tried to explain. I didn't take anything. Eli yelled back, but the footsteps only got closer. He swerved, hit a stack of loose trash bags, and the cart tipped. Plastic bottles spilled everywhere. Eli cursed under his breath and ducked behind a row of dumpsters, dropping flat to the ground as a flashlight beam swept past his face. Kid's gone, the guard muttered after a moment. Eli stayed still until the footsteps faded. Only then did he exhale. His hands shook as he pushed himself up. He reached blindly into one of the torn trash bags to steady himself, and froze. Something cold and solid pressed against his fingers. Eli pulled it out slowly. A ring. Even in the dim alley light, it caught a sharp glint. Not costume jewelry. Not fake. The weight alone told him that. A diamond ring caked in grime but unmistakably real. Eli swallowed. No way, he whispered. His first instinct was to shove it into his pocket and run. Food flashed through his mind. Rent. Medicine for his mom. A night without hunger. But something made him pause. He wiped the inside of the ring with his thumb. There were words engraved inside. A name. Eli frowned, squinting closer. For Margaret, he read softly, with all my love. The alley felt suddenly quieter. Eli stared at the ring for a long moment, then slowly sat down on the curb, his heart racing for an entirely different reason now. Someone loved this. At home, Eli barely touched his dinner. His mother noticed immediately. You're quiet, she said, watching him from across the small kitchen. Did something happen? Eli shook his head. Just tired. She nodded, not pushing. She rarely did these days. Everyone was tired. That night, Eli lay awake staring at the ceiling, the ring hidden inside an old sock under his mattress. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the name engraved inside it. Margaret. He imagined an old couple. A proposal. A promise. By morning, the hunger won. The pawn shop smelled like metal and old carpet. Eli approached the counter cautiously and slid the ring forward. The man behind the counter picked it up, his expression changing instantly. Where'd you get this? The man asked. I found it, Eli said quickly. In the trash. The man's eyes narrowed. You found a diamond ring like this in the trash? Yes. The man leaned back, studying Eli's worn shoes, his thin frame. Kid, this ring's worth more than you think. Eli's pulse quickened. So, how much? Instead of answering, the man set the ring down carefully. You should leave. What? You should leave before this gets complicated, the man said, lowering his voice. This looks like something that was reported stolen. Eli's stomach dropped. Stolen? There was an armed robbery 2 nights ago, the man continued. Old woman. Gunpoint. Jewelry taken. You don't want to be standing here with this. Eli grabbed the ring and backed away. I didn't steal it. I know, the man said. That's why I'm warning you. Outside, Eli leaned against the wall, gasping. Gunpoint. He looked down at the ring in his palm, suddenly heavy in a different way. The next afternoon, Eli sat on a bench across from the police station, bouncing his knee uncontrollably. He hadn't planned to come here. His feet had just brought him. People walked in and out. Officers talked. A woman cried quietly on the steps. Eli's eyes drifted to her. She was elderly, wrapped in a thin coat despite the warmth. Her hands trembled as she clutched a paper cup of water. An officer knelt in front of her, speaking gently. Mrs. Margaret Lewis, the officer said. We're doing everything we can. Eli's breath caught. Margaret. His heart pounded so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it. He stood slowly, legs weak, and approached. "Excuse me," he said softly. The officer looked up. "Yes." Eli swallowed. I think I have something that belongs to her." Margaret looked up, her eyes red and hollow. "What?" Eli opened his hand. The ring gleamed between them. Margaret's face collapsed. "Oh my God," she whispered, her knees buckling as she reached for it. That's my husband's ring." She pressed it to her chest and sobbed openly, gripping Eli's sleeve. "I thought it was gone forever." Eli stood frozen as people gathered around them. Phones came out. Whispers spread. "I found it," Eli said quietly. "In the trash. I'm sorry it took me this long." Margaret looked up at him, tears streaking her face. "You brought it back," she said. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," Eli replied. She pulled him into a tight hug, her voice shaking. "Thank you. Thank you, my boy." Eli didn't notice the crowd anymore. Only the way her hands trembled, and how something inside his chest loosened. When she finally stepped back, she wiped her eyes and looked at him closely. "Will you come home with me?" she asked gently. "I want to thank you properly." Eli hesitated. The officer raised an eyebrow. "You don't have to." "It's okay," Eli said quietly. He followed her. He had no idea that walking beside her would change his life forever. Eli didn't sleep that night. The ring sat on his desk, catching the light every time he moved. He picked it up, turned it slowly, then set it down again like it might burn him. His mother stood in the doorway, arms crossed, disbelief still written all over her face. "Tell me again," she said quietly. "I told you everything," Eli replied. "She gave it to me. The scholarship. The debts." His mother shook her head slowly. "People don't do that." "She did." Silence filled the room. "What if she changes her mind?" his mother asked. "What if this is a mistake?" Eli swallowed. "Then at least I did the right thing." His mother stared at him for a long moment, then walked over and hugged him tightly. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "No matter what happens next." The next few days moved fast. Too fast. Eli was called into meetings he didn't understand. Papers he couldn't pronounce were placed in front of him. Lawyers spoke carefully, slowly, like they were afraid he'd disappear if they talked too fast. Margaret was always there. Watching. Listening. Never speaking over him. At one point Eli pulled her aside. "Why me?" She looked at him calmly. "Because you reminded me of who my husband was." That answer followed him everywhere. The story hit the internet by the end of the week. Boy returns diamond ring found in trash. Teen chooses honesty over fortune. People recognized him on the street. Some praised him. Some doubted him. One man scoffed loudly in a grocery store. "If that were me, I'd have sold it." Eli didn't respond. But not everyone was happy. 2 nights later Eli heard a knock. "Art. Angry." He opened the door slowly. 2 men stood there. "You the kid who found the ring?" one asked. Eli's heart dropped. "Who's asking?" "The people who lost it," the man said coldly. Eli stepped back. "I already returned it." The man laughed. "Yeah, we saw that." The second man stepped closer. "You made things complicated." Eli's chest tightened. "I don't know what you want." "You found it in the trash," the man said. "Which means it was ours first." Eli shook his head. "I don't have it." "Then you better hope that old woman keeps quiet," the man muttered. They left. Eli locked the door, his hands shaking violently. The next morning Eli went straight to Margaret's house. She opened the door, took one look at his face and stepped aside. "They came," Eli said breathlessly. "The men who robbed you." Margaret's expression darkened, but her voice stayed calm. "Sit." She made a phone call. "Yes," she said into the phone. They approached him. She listened, nodded once and hung up. "They won't bother you again," she said. Eli stared at her. "How do you know?" "Because I won't allow it." For the first time Eli understood. She wasn't just kind. She was powerful. Weeks passed. Eli started school again. A real school. New clothes. New books. But the ring stayed in his pocket. One afternoon he finally asked, "Why did you really give it to me?" Margaret smiled sadly. Because keeping it after that night felt selfish. She looked out the window. My husband believed that integrity should always come back multiplied. I think this was his way of proving it. Eli nodded slowly. One evening, Margaret invited Eli to dinner again. This time, reporters waited outside. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "Yes," Eli admitted. She squeezed his hand. "Good. It means you still care." Inside, the crowd waited. Margaret stood at the podium once more. "I want to address something," she said. "Some people believe kindness is weakness. That honesty is foolish." She looked directly at the audience. "I disagree." She gestured to Eli. "This young man didn't change because of money. Money came because he refused to change." Applause thundered. Eli blinked back tears. Margaret stepped down and whispered, "Almost done." Later that night, Eli sat alone, scrolling through comments. Some wrote, "This restored my faith in humanity." Others, "I'd never do that." Eli typed nothing. He closed his phone and looked at the ring one last time. Tomorrow everything would change again. He just didn't know how yet. Eli stood in front of the mirror adjusting a borrowed jacket that still didn't feel like it belonged to him. His reflection stared back, unfamiliar but steady. "You ready?" his mother asked from behind him. "I think so," he said, though his voice betrayed him. Outside, the city hummed like nothing had changed. But everything had. At the event hall, the air buzzed with anticipation. People whispered as Eli walked past. Some smiled. Some stared like he was an exhibit. Margaret waited near the stage. "You look nervous," she said gently. "I am." She nodded. "Good. Courage only matters when fear is present." He looked at her. "Are you sure about all this?" Margaret met his gaze. "I've never been more sure of anything." When she stepped to the microphone, the room fell silent. "I didn't plan to speak again tonight," Margaret said. "But I feel something important needs to be said." She paused, letting the weight settle. "After the robbery, I was angry. Bitter. I believed the world had finally proven me right, that people take what they can and leave the rest broken." She glanced at Eli. Then a boy returned a ring he found in a trash can. A soft murmur moved through the crowd. "He didn't know who I was. He didn't know there would be cameras. He didn't even know if he'd get in trouble. But he returned it anyway." Margaret's voice wavered. "That choice healed something in me." She turned fully toward Eli. "And tonight, I want to finish what that choice started." An assistant handed her a small velvet box. Eli's stomach tightened. She opened it slowly. Inside was the ring. Gasps echoed through the room. "I gave this ring to Eli once," Margaret said. "And I took it back." Eli's heart stopped. "I did that because I wasn't finished being brave yet," she continued. "But now I am." She walked toward him, every step deliberate. "My husband believed objects carry meaning only when we decide what they stand for," she said. "This ring once stood for love, then for loss, then for fear." She placed it gently into Eli's palm. "Tonight it stands for integrity." The room erupted. Eli's hands shook as he looked down at the ring, tears blurring his vision. "I don't deserve this," he whispered. Margaret smiled. "None of us deserve grace. That's why it matters." After the event, the crowd slowly thinned. Eli stepped outside into the cool night air, breathing deeply. "You okay?" Margaret asked, joining him. "I think so," he said. "It's just a lot." She nodded. "It should be." He hesitated. "What happens now?" Margaret looked out at the city. "Now you live your life. And one day when you have the chance, you pass it forward." Eli nodded slowly. "I will," he said. She squeezed his shoulder. "I know." Months passed. Eli adjusted to his new school, new routines, new expectations. But he didn't forget where he came from. He still walked past the alley sometimes, still saw the same dumpsters, the same shadows. Only now he walked with his head up. One afternoon, a younger kid digging through trash looked up at him nervously. Eli smiled. "You're good," he said. "Just be careful." The kid nodded, relieved. Eli walked on. On the anniversary of the robbery, Eli visited Margaret's house. She answered the door smiling. "I was wondering when you'd come." "I brought something," he said, holding out a small framed photo. It was the ring. Close up. The engraving visible. Margaret's eyes filled. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," Eli said. "It belongs to both of us now." She hugged him tightly. "I'm proud of you." That night Eli sat at his desk, the ring resting beside his books. He thought about how close he'd come to selling it. How one decision, made in a dark alley beside a trash can, had rewritten his future. Not because of luck, but because he chose honesty when no one was watching. If this story moved you even a little, take a second to like this video. It helps more people see stories like this. Subscribe if you believe integrity still matters. And comment below, what would you have done if you found that ring? Because sometimes, the smallest choice can change everything. Margaret's house didn't look special from the outside. Small. Quiet. The kind of place people passed without noticing. Eli followed her up the steps, still half expecting someone to stop him and ask questions. Inside, she set her purse down with shaking hands and turned to him. "Sit," she said softly. "Please." Eli perched on the edge of the couch, shoulders tense. Margaret disappeared into the kitchen and returned with 2 cups of tea. She placed one in front of him, then sat across, holding the ring tightly in her palm. "I don't think you understand what you did," she said. Eli stared at the steam rising from the cup. "I just returned it." She shook her head slowly. "That ring was on my finger the day my husband proposed. He saved for 3 years. 3. When he died, it was the last thing I had that still felt like him." Her voice cracked. "They pointed a gun at me," she continued. "Right here." She tapped her chest. "I thought that was it. When they took my bag, I cried over that ring more than the money." Eli looked up. "I'm sorry." She smiled faintly. "You gave me something back I thought the world had already taken." There was a pause. "So," Margaret said gently, "tell me about you." Eli hesitated. "There's not much. I'd like to hear it anyway." He sighed. "My dad left when I was little. My mom works nights. I collect recyclables after school. Sometimes before. We're behind on rent." Margaret listened without interrupting, eyes fixed on him. "And the ring?" she asked. "You could have sold it." "I thought about it," Eli admitted quietly. "A lot. But you didn't." Eli shrugged. "It had your name." Something unreadable crossed her face. The next morning Eli woke up to a knock at the door. His mother opened it cautiously. "Eli." Margaret's voice called. "May I come in?" Eli froze. "What's she doing here?" His mother looked between them, confused. "Do you know this woman?" "Yes," Eli said quickly. She's the ring owner." Margaret smiled politely. "I hope I'm not intruding." Inside, Margaret sat at the small table, her eyes taking in the peeling paint, the empty fridge, the stack of overdue bills. She said nothing. When she left, she hugged Eli tightly. "I'll see you again soon." Eli watched her walk away, unease creeping in. 2 days later, a letter arrived. Eli opened it slowly. "You are invited," he read aloud, "to a private community recognition gathering." "What is that?" his mom asked. "I don't know." The address was downtown. "Fancy." Eli almost didn't go. The room buzzed with quiet conversation when he entered. Men in suits. Women with clipboards. Cameras. Eli felt horribly out of place. Margaret stood at the front, composed, calm, Nothing like the shaking woman outside the police station. She spotted him and smiled. "Thank you all for coming," she said into the microphone. "I won't take long." The room stilled. "A few nights ago," she continued, "I was robbed at gunpoint. I lost things that can never be replaced." Murmurs rippled. "But I also learned something," she said, her eyes locking onto Eli. "That integrity still exists." She gestured toward him. "This young man found my ring in a trash can. He could have sold it. No one would have known. But he returned it." The room turned. Eli's face burned. "I asked him why," Margaret said. "He said, it had your name." A few people wiped their eyes. "I spent my life believing wealth was protection," she continued. "But that night showed me character is worth more." She paused. "Which is why today I'm announcing a full scholarship for Eli. His education. His living costs. His family's debts, cleared." Gasps filled the room. Eli stood up, shaking. "Wait, what?" Margaret raised her hand gently. "Sit. I'm not done." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the ring. "This ring fulfilled its purpose," she said. "But I believe it found its true owner the moment it was returned with honesty." She stepped down and placed it in Eli's trembling hand. "I want you to keep it." The room erupted. Eli's vision blurred. I can't." "You already did," she said softly.